So thank you, Meredith, for your time today. And I'd just like to give a little bit of a brief summary around Bradfield Senior College, located in Sydney at McLennan's campus. And can you give us a brief overview about your students and the cohort that you have?
Sure, thank you, Julie. It's lovely to be here and to talk about the project-based learning that we do here at Bradfield. It's such an important part of what we do. So Bradfield's been around since 1993. Around 32 years we've been a part of TAFE New South Wales. We are a school. We're funded by the Department of Education, but we are a wholly TAFE delivery. We offer creative-based courses alongside the HSC, so it's year 11 and 12. Everyone comes here, does the HSC, but alongside that we're fortunate to be able to deliver a range of vocational courses, mostly aligned with the creative industries, so that students can start to explore and specialise before they leave school. Our students come from all over Sydney, so 190 different suburbs, so they often have to take a couple of buses to get here. And they come from a range of backgrounds. We love the diversity that exists here at Bradfield. So our students want something different than the traditional school environment provides. So this move into a more mature adult style of learning, I think, is what they value. They come here because they can choose courses that they normally wouldn't be allowed to choose at their school. Sometimes schools only allow them to do one creative course or one vocational course, whereas our students can do 2, 3, 4 vocational courses as part of their HSC. I think it is just about being able to be who they are as well and be individuals and really start to see what their future might look like, rather than just being caught into that traditional school 8-hour environment where all you're working towards is your HSC and that final mark. I think we're just offering something a bit broader than that.
What a wonderful project to have, where you're really customising your delivery around the student focus.
And that's really what has allowed us to bring this project-based learning to life. This wouldn't be possible in the majority of schools. The majority of schools wouldn't tackle a project of the size that we do because the focus is on the HSC. The focus is purely on preparing students for an exam, which is great. There's certainly a call for that. I'm not criticising that in any way, but I think this is just offering something different, not being able to open that window to what the possibilities are for their futures.
So our focus today is around project-based learning, which you've mentioned. Give us a little bit of an indicator of some of your previous projects.
Sure, so we've been doing the project, as we call it, for 10 years. So Spark was our 10th project. We started back in 2015 with a small project around the Royal North Shore Hospital. So I think the most important thing about the project for us is the involvement with community and industry. So what's happening in industry that we can tap into, what's happening in our local community that can make it relevant, make the learning relevant for students. And we happened by accident to find a little project with Royal North Shore Hospital and their museum, which was an old stuffy room with stuffy things in, microscopes in bookcases. And they said, no one ever comes to see our museum. Our museum is dead. It's just old, crumbling, dusty artefacts. What we want you to do is bring your students in to make it come to life. And really it was that invitation that started everything, that wonderful woman from Royal North Shore Hospital who just opened our eyes to the possibilities. Most important thing about the project is it's multidisciplinary. Our science students work with our art students, our filmmaking students work with our music students and our art students, because that's the way industry works. Industry works in a multidisciplinary way, and so introducing students to that concept early on is really important to the way that they then leave the school and go into either further study or industry. So we had art students creating graphics of, I think it was the polio virus, in fact, and they came back and manipulated those images in Photoshop. We created artworks from them and then put those, interestingly, polio viruses onto tea towels, which we then sold, which was all, very interesting. But that again was, what else can we do with the work? We can sit and learn about the polio virus in biology. We can then work on how can we make this come alive in art, and then how can we find the motivation. I think that's the most important thing. How can we use this project-based learning to help students with motivation? We did a recent survey of our students. We survey our students all the time. We've got to know who's in the room. We've got to know our students well. We've got to know what they want. 60% of our students said they struggled with motivation. That really tells us a lot. You know, why am I coming here day after day? Why am I doing this course? And if we don't tap into that, and if we don't help students find their intrinsic motivation, we're never going to get them through to the end. So I think that's the reason why we work with the project and find a reason for it other than the mark or the competency. We use audience as motivator. That's, I guess, the basis of our project-based learning. Finding that intrinsic motivation is the key to them being engaged in everything that they do here at Bradfield. So I guess that was the core of it. We then realised that we needed to find something really special and exciting that would lift it out of the classroom. We didn't want it to be a school project that just has elements of kind of mediocrity about it. We were really fortunate to use Vivid, so the Vivid Festival, and at the time Jess Scully was the curator of Vivid Ideas, and she was all about, let's just get creativity embedded in everything we do, which was, you know, wonderful. We tapped right into that and said, hey, we've got something for that. We're a creative high school and we want to help students navigate the creative industries and find their way into creative pathways. At the time, we also brought people in to masterclasses and things that we ran for the community. But it, again, was the core of what we now are doing each year in terms of project-based learning. And each year we came up with a different theme, an area that we could look at for our students and look at the different skills groups within the students. So how can we bring the different skills groups? How do we find a group that the students can choose at the beginning of the year to go into, whether that be writing, the English advanced students going into story and writing, the animation and filmmaking students into moving image, and how can we expand on that, and how can they then work with the design students, the visual arts students. So tapping into the vocational courses and the passions of our students, pulling together a multidisciplinary team that would then focus on this end event. Audiences motivator, it's a public event. What we do and what we create really matters. So we were so fortunate. We worked with Vivid until last year, in fact, put on a different event every year. The focus of the event changed every year, but there is always an element of what can each of these skills teams produce that we can showcase for the event. So we have live performance, obviously, as something we can always do. Music, dance, drama, film that we can show, artworks that we can exhibit, and then it's the marriage of all of those in the merchandise. The event students obviously run the event. It's evolved over the years. Different things, different times, different students, different teachers. That's the beauty of it. It has to keep evolving. It cannot stay the same. First most important thing is, who have we got in the room? Who are our students? What are they bringing to the party? I think, you know, the insight that I hope that I can give the audience today for TAFE is we've got their students of tomorrow. So what we're finding is our students are changing so rapidly. Where we would notice a trend over 5 years, every year at the moment is different, particularly since COVID. They're not street smart, they're cyber street smart. Phones are not the enemy. Phones are the most wonderful vehicle for students to gain insight and perspective. And so using that insight and perspective, they're demanding more. Students are demanding a different way of learning. And unless we keep pace with that, we can't just have the same old lessons with the overhead projector to pull out a very archaic method of delivery, you know, but through to PowerPoints, and you've just got to learn this content. Just get this content into your head and then go write an essay about it. Students are saying they want more. We are finding that students are coming to us with filmmaking skills that are far superior to people who've been in industry for 2 or 3 years. They can learn things on YouTube. They can go away and sit and learn how to do something in Photoshop. So TAFE has to be ready to tackle that. What do we do with that? And what we can do is produce a learning environment and a learning experience that allows students to experience what industry looks like. And that's why we do project-based learning.
There's so many elements in there that you've described, which are wonderful. I mean, the community connection is incredible, and they really need to be able to showcase their work in front of a real audience. This time around, we're looking at Spark 2024. With this project, it runs over semester 1 and...
16 weeks. So we run into term 2.
So your students coming in, they're year 11. How do you identify their strengths? I mean, you've mentioned about how they've learnt so many things on YouTube and they've come with so many skills. How do you match that up with this project-based learning?
We send them a survey before they come to us. We send out a survey which gauges what skills they have. And so we go down to a deep level of what software they've been using, what they have in their portfolios. And they do come at 16 with a portfolio. That's the difference that we're seeing. Some don't. Some come with just an interest of where they would like to explore and what they would like to do. So we send out quite a lengthy survey, which really helps us to get the insight into what they're bringing, what their interests are, what their passions are. And then we use that as the starting point to pop them into skills teams. We align their HSC and vocational courses as well as what they say they do. So sometimes we might put a student into visual arts, but actually their major passion is in animation. And so we'll have to move that student when they come to us. We know a lot about them before they come here, but the first 4 weeks of the project is also about getting to know them. Putting them into situations, into brainstorming situations, into workshop type situations so that we can test those capabilities and those skills. We can identify the leaders, we can identify the students who are struggling or are struggling to find their place, then hopefully make the right changes and moves in those first 4 weeks so that when the work starts, they're in the right place for the project. Do we always get it right? Of course not. And, you know, sometimes a student will be stuck in a group that they don't want to be in, but they need to be there. But that's life too. And so this is about teaching what it's like in the workplace. You don't always get to choose what you want to do. You don't always get to choose how you do it. You don't get to choose who you work with. And so we don't want to artificially create something that just makes it all rainbows and unicorns. It actually has to be challenging for students to be able to learn those employability skills, which is, again, the core of why we do the project. So Spark is a 24-minute film, round about that. It's made up of 6 films. It's obviously showing behind us here in the film. And it's a combination of live action, of animation, of filmed artworks, special effects, dance, whole range of things that come out of each of the skills groups that tells a story about energy.
It starts with a spark. So small and quaint, so subtle and faint. Who knew it would fade? And I love looking at your face, so easy to trace, but you're running out of days.
We wrote a very detailed project brief, which we're going to make available for people to have a look at. That was the first time we'd done that. The project evolves every year. The brief was important to giving students a really good idea of what they were getting into. And I think that came out of the previous year's project, Hexad, where we first tackled the film idea. And so each year we take what we got from the last one, reflect on it, and then work out how do we put that into action for the next year. So 6 films, there's a theme to each of the films. That was brainstormed in the early weeks. How could we approach this? What could we do? There's so much that the students can still bring into the project. Even though there's a fairly detailed and specific brief, they can then bring to it their creativity, their ideas about how to make it come alive. How do you do that with, say, 16 students in a group? How do you manage the different creative ideas? How do you manage the conflict that comes up as a result of that? I want my idea to be the one. Well, what about all this work I've already done? How am I going to make, how are you going to make that work? I don't want to make that work. Lots of challenges. We don't shy away from the fact that the project is uncomfortable for everyone. It's uncomfortable for me, and there are weeks where we say, what are we doing? How are we going to get through this? But I think that's the magic. I think that's the secret. We keep a motto going every year, keep it simple. Inevitably we don't, and inevitably we bite off more than we can chew. I think what happened with Hexad is that's when we noticed that the skill levels of the student were more superior than we had had in the past. And so we had to adapt to that, and we had to actually push those students further than they were comfortable with. How do we manage that over the 16 weeks? With absolute dexterity and absolute, we're on our feet the entire time. It is hard work for the students as well. It's tiring work, but I think why we keep coming back for more, on the day of the project, along the way there are lots of magic moments, but on the day of the project is when students sit back and say, wow, we did this. We accomplished this film. And working through those challenges is the only way that students can build those employability skills. They're talked about so often. There's a great piece of research done, the Skills Imperative 2035. It's a piece of UK research about what is the workforce going to demand of their workers in 2035. And it isn't about the qualifications. It's about the employability attributes. It's about communication. It's about conflict solving and creativity and innovative thinking. And so how are you going to develop those with a role play in the class? Until you're thrust into a situation, into a workplace replicated situation where what you're producing matters, you're just not going to put students into that realm of discomfort or that realm of how am I going to find my way out of this? And that's what project-based learning does.
It's totally immersive, but it's also so challenging. I can imagine for a teacher to see a student evolve through that process must be so rewarding. So from a teacher perspective, sounds like a lot of work, sounds exhausting, but what are the benefits that you can see and for yourself in project-based learning?
The benefits for teachers is seeing students outside of the classroom in a really practical environment. So it just absolutely throws the dynamics of school and the classroom into disarray.
My name's Grace. I was in the music area. I think I really figured out that music is what I want to do at Bradfield. Spark, it was the first time I ever had to take music seriously. Like when I heard, you have to write a song, you have to do all these things. It made me so excited to take music like a serious sort of thing, like I have to do it. It wasn't just for fun because I, get to. I mean, as soon as I felt that excitement as it being like a job, I was ecstatic. Like it was just the most amazing feeling.
It was really interesting and definitely brought out a very creative side to my thinking. It helped me develop more patience skills on developing a very hard dress like this to when it comes sitting on the body.
And so it allows teachers to see qualities in students that they might not see in a passive classroom environment. It allows them to see the qualities also that students might be struggling with. So it lays everything bare for all of us. Teachers struggle through the project at times. For our biology or our science or our history, English teachers who don't do so much of that project-based learning, it is a challenge. But they do keep coming back because of what they see that comes out of it for the students. They learn. Teachers learn through this process. If we didn't learn, I don't think we'd keep coming back. Keeps you open to new ideas and open to new perspectives. One of our cultural principles at Bradfield is we're always open to learning, and that goes for me, it goes for the teachers. We don't know everything. Unless we're open to learning, we can't possibly teach our students and model for our students the importance of being open to learning. Being a lifelong learner in this rapidly changing environment that people are going into is about being able to adapt and flex and be open to always learning. So I think that's what it is. I think being exposed to new ways of approaching class, open to different pedagogies, andragogies, all the agogies that you may need, That's stimulating, it's inspiring. The tiredness and the challenge and the conflict go with that. But I think the reward is so big because the day that we stage is flashy and showy and vibrant and wonderful, and that sense of achievement for everyone is very real.
So can we unpack a little bit of what that Spark showing of the film looks like? Sounds like an amazing afternoon, evening of Spark.
At the moment we've settled on a 4 to 8 o'clock time slot, which seems to suit parents after work, coming from work, plus general public. It still keeps a window open for general public to come in as well. From the moment they enter the foyer, we transform the school into whatever the theme is for the year. So this year we had planets in the foyer with projections on the planets, and a huge planet with projections on our main foyer. So people were immediately transported to somewhere different. It's an immersive experience. That's part of the brief. We want to create something that's truly immersive and showcases the talents of our students from the minute they enter to the minute they go into the theatre and so on. The corridors are decorated with sculpture and paintings and projections, filmmakers working with artists, working with sculptors, working with the events people to transform the pathway that the audience takes. We then move them into the theatre, and the theatre is then transformed into a multi-screen, immersive environment. So we have our big main projector with the fashion students and myself sewed a very large white screen for the back of our theatre. Then we have IKEA curtains, white IKEA curtains that have a lovely film, sort of transparent, moving kind of aspect to them that are on big rigs. That we have, I think, 4 of those, and projectors mounted in the rigging to project onto each of these surfaces. So it's meant not to be a sit down, let's watch a film, but immersive experience where you can walk around and experience the different pieces of art, poetry in that 20 or so minutes that they're there. So that's the film, that's the kind of main event. We also have the cutting room floor, which is such an important part of what we do. The cutting room floor is what didn't make it to the final cut, because the reality is not all of your work will make it into the final cut, but every piece of work that is done had something to do with what the final product looked like. So helping students to understand what ideas did you think were fantastic in week 2, but by week 6 had become tired and didn't quite make the grade, or for some reason just didn't make it into the final film. So the cutting room floor is about the process. We do interviews with students along the way to help them document and understand what they're doing, what worked, what didn't work, the mind maps that we start with, all there for the audience to also see, because that's part of what we do is come and see this different style of learning in action. Whatever process they're working on, whether it be a creative process, a design process, a future thinking process, helps them to understand how the pieces all fit together. And one of the other main reasons we do this is because our Year 12 students do so many major works for their HSC. We had 300 major works this year. And what we know from experience is that a lot of students go with their first idea. I've got this great idea, this is what I want to do, and I'm doing it. And we are really trying to push them through that first idea into their second, third, or fourth idea, and do the research that's necessary to wrap around that so that their project is more complex and more resolved, if you like, by the time they get to Year 12. We've found that the impact of the project we do each year means that the level of project that they're creating in Year 12 has really improved, and we've seen that for our exemplary nominations. We had 9 exemplary nominations in the HSC this year in multimedia, 29 in dance. So we're really seeing the quality of the work improving. Films that have been produced that are already gaining traction out in the world. That's really important, an important part of the project. As well, we have on the day live music, so live music in our courtyard and our merchandise markets. So again, what can I do with this piece of art? I can manipulate it in Photoshop through our Design Fundamentals course. I can put it onto a t-shirt or a tea towel or a tote bag. We sell those as part of our markets, and that helps us to finance some of the aspects for the following year's project. That's where the events and the business students get to run the markets and understand the budgeting and the operations and how we pull that together. WHS is a big part of that as well. So in the courtyard, we have projections on our sails, designing roughly an hour for each audience member to interact with all of the various elements and create a very memorable event. The event next year, we are really fortunate to be doing a collaboration with Luna Park. Vivid, we were lucky to have for so many years. This year, so fortunate to have done some work with North Sydney Council, which led me to meet the head of strategy and immersive experiences at Luna Park. And she said, hey, let's do a collaboration. So we're working on Luna Park's 90th birthday celebration. There'll be an event at the college again, and we're right in the middle right now of brainstorming what that might look like. Are we doing a 20-minute film? Are we doing a 10-minute film? Are there two different types of film about memories of Luna Park? It's a really exciting process right now because this is where all the creativity happens, and we'll create our project brief. We're also working towards an event at Luna Park, which will be their 90th birthday. It doesn't coincide with our teaching program, so we have to say what are the elements we can do in the 16 weeks we have that we can then transport into that event. So very exciting opportunity, and the project has to be exciting. I mean, it has to be something that people really want to get their teeth into, that the teachers really want to get involved in, and seeing that excitement, Luna Park immediately brings excitement and joy. So it's a lovely thing for us to be working on next year.
Oh, you've sold me, Meredith. It sounds amazing.
June 5th. Book it
I'll
in your
be
diary.
there. I've marked it in my calendar, and so should all of us at TAFE.
Absolutely, please do.
Attend. So just to give some tips to our teachers in the audience here today, your projects are amazing. They're so connected to community, and again, it's the focus of the students and what they're coming out with. Any tips for our teachers that are looking at starting up some project-based learning?
Well, I mean, don't be put off by the fact that what we do here is really showy and big, and, we are fortunate that we've got 160 students. We've got a program where we have the freedom to do some of these things, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it in one course with 10 students. And that's what we're actually looking at more and more, is how can we bring some of the attributes of project-based learning into every class. There is some work being done, I know, on project-based learning within what will be the Creative Cultural Services faculty about attributes of employability. So what are those core things that we want students to develop? And there'll be some modules, I think, that are going to be made available to staff to tap into. What are the things that we want students to develop? And then it's about saying, what is the context of my course? Who's in my class? Who are their students? What do they want? What is their hunger? Where do they want to be? And then saying, okay, let's work out what is happening within that industry at the moment that could contextualize it for the students and make it seem real. What's happening in the community? Is there something, a problem? Project-based learning often starts with a driving question or a problem. There are many different types of project-based learning. You can read up about all of them. Again, I think we're building a database at the moment of tools and things that you can use. We've looked at many different types. We embrace some and keep them, and we've abandoned others. Finding that one external motivating factor, and then just building some project that allows these other types of activities to come in, where students are having to tackle a problem or tackle something that can help them find their motivation to continue with the course, to finish the course, and give it relevance for what their next step might be. So think small, don't think as big as we have. Don't be afraid to think big either. I mean, if you can, look at who else you've got on your campus. Look at who else is in the office next to you. Don't be afraid to say, hey, could we get those construction students to help us build something on the site that meets a need for something on the site. Find a need, find a problem, and then look at how you might solve that. Who are the people you need to bring in who can help you? We bring our parents in. We survey our parents early on and find out who are the filmmakers, who are the artists, who can come into the classroom, give a masterclass, help bring relevance, industry relevance. Who have you got at your disposal? What is your driving problem? And how can I make that come alive for students?
Great words of advice there, Meredith, because the projects are huge and they're They're right. They're very showy, but they are so exciting. And start small. I like that idea, and to collaborate with others that are close by, and connections with parents, or maybe the students have connections as well. They may be working in the industry already.
That's right. And often the people we bring in, some of the animation that you might have seen from Hexad, which was our project from last year. We worked with Council. So we worked with North Sydney Council. They gave us an artist in residence for the time. And Alma Studhope brought in this stop motion animation. And some of our students with diverse learning needs found that that was a really great project for them to not be part of this really loud, wild group, but to actually just focus in a small, quiet room on these lovely stop motion animations. So bringing that artist in residence in, we hadn't envisaged that when we were planning our project and when we did our project brief. So we had to think on our feet and say, hey, this is how we can make the project work for that group of students.
Wonderful words of advice around how to implement project-based learning. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for sharing these examples, previous and also Spark and future with Luna Park. But thank you so much for your time and giving us some inspiration. So thank you so much, Meredith. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. You know, we love what we do here. And unless we love what we do, it doesn't make sense, does it?
No. So thank you for joining us, for your time. And again, hopefully you've taken some inspiration from Meredith and her projects that she's run here at Bradfield Senior College, and apply those into your areas in your teaching at TAFE.